Since this is Trails and Ales, let's start this off right, shall we? Welcome, one and all, to ForeverGreen Trails 2021 Trails and Ales webinar event, since we are forced once again to be virtual. Thank you so much for your patience and also your participation. Just a little bit about what we will be doing this evening. As you have probably noticed, mics and cameras are off, as well as chat. We will be looking at the Q&A, and hopefully Chad and Mike, you can help me out by monitoring that. And we'll have time for that at the end of the presentation. And speaking of the presentation, I'll be talking a little bit about ForeverGreen Trails and the origin of this project, the Trails Scorecard Program, as well as a survey that we are using, an online survey that we're using, and a map that we'll be applying the survey results to. And we'll also be talking about using technology for trail development, and a little bit about how we've done that so far and plans that we have for doing that more so in the future. So without further ado, I wanted to introduce not one guest, but two. I didn't know that we would be joined with both, so I'm sorry. We only have one handsome picture here. We're joined by Chad Akins, who Chad's done some volunteer work with us, as well as Woodland Trail Greenway Association from Thurston County, and he's a local guy, and he loves trails, and pretty much that's all you need to know. It's good. He's got trail cred, that's for sure, and he's helping me understand technology and how it can be applied for trails. And on this project, we work with Mike Ruth, who is also joining us this evening, faculty from the Evergreen State College. And we were also helped out by someone else who couldn't make it tonight because he's somewhere on Mount Rainier doing trail maintenance work, Julian Vishnevsky. And I know that that's how his name is pronounced because I asked him, Vishnevsky. And they helped me specifically with technology that we used for our survey, and we'll show you that survey and more. So let's get into it. A little bit about ForeverGreen Trails. We are a Pierce County-wide nonprofit organization, and you can see there our mission statement. And more specifically, what we do in order to fulfill that mission statement or work towards it is that we put on programs like this. We hold events like Trails and Ales and Pierce County Trails Day and the Pierce County Trails Conference. And we have projects, partnerships with Pierce County Parks and the Carbon River Corridor, as well as the Yelm Prairie Line Trail, trying to coordinate and facilitate a multi-jurisdictional trail solution to cross the Nisqually River and connect Thurston and Pierce counties. And we try to act as a forum for jurisdictional communication and cooperation to help government agencies, elected officials, and nonprofit organizations in the public, so we can all work together more effectively to create trails. So the Trails Scorecard program actually has its origins in a previous effort that we did, a community recognition program called Trail Friendly Community, where essentially if a jurisdiction met a few criteria, they were declared a trail friendly community. And that's nice, but the question arises, what is different as a result of being, of having that program? What's different in terms of being declared a trail-friendly community? And could this kind of effort do more? And why do we want to do more? Well, on the left, you'll see that graphic. And if it didn't occur to you yet, it should now. It's because Pierce County as a region is far behind in terms of compared to other counties in terms of trail miles per capita. And we're a fast growth area. So it's maybe an extra burden to the catch up and keep up in terms of trail miles per capita. We have, compared to many years ago, we have a lot more things in place to serve the public with trails, but we are still operating under a deficit of many years of not having those things in place, like parks impact fees as just one example, but a significant one. So part of what ForeverGreen Trails does is try to figure out ways to get things to happen faster in terms of trails. So we have this sense of urgency, and that's why we want to have whatever project we're doing, any kind of community recognition program, how can we have it do more for trails? So thus the Trails Scorecard Program. It will gather similar data as the community recognition program. And we'll show you that in the survey in just a bit. But it also is gathering some new data about local consistency with other neighboring jurisdictions, consistency with the regional trails plan, and also seeks to get feedback to help ForeverGreen Trails focus its support of these local jurisdictions. We can provide, for instance, model policy language if local jurisdiction doesn't have much in the way of trails language in their comprehensive plan, say, or if they don't have, if they are not in the habit of doing an annual proclamation in support of Pierce County Trails Day, we can help them with that. But it's one of these things of we don't know how we can help folks until we ask them, and so that is a large chunk of what the Trails Scorecard Program does. And we'll talk more about fundraising partnerships in a little bit. So if we understand our partners' needs, then we're much more likely to accelerate the build out of our regional trails network. Otherwise, our efforts we might be at risk of our efforts being, what about this? Does this work? What about that? Does that work? Instead of, frankly, asking the local jurisdictions, what do you need? How can we help you? And we are, even in just initial conversations, we're finding out that there's, it's not terribly surprising that the diversity in local jurisdictions in terms of their size and how well-heeled they are, if they have, tax base to support it, they have different needs. So we need to understand those things, even among the local jurisdictions that we serve. So we created this survey, and this survey is a, I guess we would say it was created by a tool called Survey 123. It's a technology called Survey 123. And that's put out by ESRI, who you might be familiar with because of their software and immense presence in the world of GIS systems. And essentially, a little bit of the nitty-gritty behind the scenes is that the survey is designed using Microsoft Excel, or at least that's how we did it, with a little bit of markup language, a little bit of syntax, and then this little piece of software, Survey 123, renders that into what you see in front of you right now. And so a local jurisdiction, after pardon me for a second. After providing some initial info, will be able to tell us about a little bit about their trail planning. Do they have a long-range parks plan? If so, can they give us URL for it? If not, they might need to provide some clarification in certain instances we're working on one. It's not that we aren't paying attention to these things, but it's in process. It hasn't been finalized. There are jurisdictions who are in the middle of starting or updating their plans, and so they might not have a plan that they can point us to immediately, but they have been putting some energy into it. Do they have standalone trails plans? How are trails treated in their comprehensive plan? Can they provide us with plan element and policy numbers so that we can look at that and see, oh, maybe we can learn something. Maybe other local jurisdictions can learn something from them, from the language that they have. And our goal is to try to, bring the whole region up together and make sure that we're all hitting all the good language. Not that there isn't room for individual community expression, but it'd be nice to share best practices, and we can do that as an organization. I think we're well suited to provide that kind of forum for folks. Scrolling on down the survey just a little bit, we get into those consistency kinds of questions. And this becomes important because if you have different trail standards, or from how they're built, or the signage, or are you the coordination with neighboring jurisdictions in terms of when trails leave one jurisdiction's boundaries and enter another's, that can be kind of problematic. It can make for unfortunate user experiences, and you may be thinking about experiences you've had where a trail ended. You literally didn't know that the trail continued across the street but a block down because it was a different jurisdiction. I know that's happened to me on a number of occasions, and that kind of coordination really matters. And we're also always wanting to have an eye towards equity in trail planning. And so we specifically have asked about that in the survey, and want to make sure that, for several reasons, it's the right thing to do, most importantly, but also because increasingly, that is something that local jurisdictions will be asked about in competitive grant programs. And they better be able to answer that question, or they will not bring home the dollars that make the trails get built. So scrolling on down a little bit more out of the planning section, we ask about trail funding, and if they have a local source of funding, and we'd like to know more about that if they do, and if they are planning on applying for grants for any trail projects in the next couple of years. And that will become particularly important in a little bit in this presentation. And if they have any programs to accept private monetary donations for their trail projects. The next section is about their promotional efforts for trails, such as proclamations, and do they host events for Pierce County Trails Day, and who we might contact with to coordinate with them. And if they have an active park and trail stewardship program, we sure would like to know who the contact is, or if they have a URL on their jurisdiction's website, because we would love to help them recruit folks. And finally, we ask the straightforward questions of how can we help you? Might be grant writing support, access to non-governmental grants, like foundational grants, policy analysis, GIS training, other volunteer stewardship, public outreach, advocacy, testimony, best practice trainings, you name it. We want to know about it. And since we might not have thought about everything, we're going to ask them for the more open-ended, anything else we can do to help you, and any final comments, and of course submit, and then that comes to us. So what do we do with that information? Well, a few things. One is we're going to look at it and look for trends in that, so that we can start to identify, our smaller jurisdictions, they're kind of telling us that they need these kinds of things. The other jurisdiction, we might be able to kind of break things out and serve the jurisdictions as they need, from each and to each, and do a better job that way. But we'll also are planning to display the results on a web map, both for the jurisdictions themselves, so they can see how they measure up against fellow jurisdictions, but also for the public. And we'll likely make a narrative report on that data that we're collecting. But as Mike said, the people who fill out the survey want to see themselves in the data, and rightfully so. So we will make that available to them. But really, this survey is only the start of a dialogue. It's really up to ForeverGreen Trails to follow up with jurisdictions and assess how we can better support them with policy, promotion, programming, coordination, and funding. And so we'll wind up having a web map where, depending on the jurisdiction, we don't have all the jurisdictions. These are just city boundaries. We unfortunately do not yet have our parks districts, at least Key Pen and Penn Met available here. And sometimes your data needs have nothing to do with anybody else's. And we found that was the case, but that in that those two jurisdictions did not have their jurisdiction boundaries in a GIS format. Well, that certainly tells us something right there about something that we could do. Fortunately, there's another actor involved. Pierce County Auditor's Office was also interested in having that kind of information for obvious reasons, because they deal with elections. And those jurisdictions, constituents might have things that they need to be on ballots in those areas. So the auditor actually has a project to add those jurisdiction boundaries into Pierce County's public GIS systems. So, but our goal is to have all the survey data to represent all that data or show all that data by, if you're on a GIS map, if you just click on the jurisdiction, you'll see what their answers were, see how they were kind of stacking up. And if we have a narrative at the end of an assessment, a score, as implied by the name scorecard, then that's one way we can show it, in addition to providing a link to the overall report on what we found out in our survey. This map has already been useful to me, actually. As many of you are aware, this legislative session that recently closed, it was a budget year. And even though this was just a little demo version of the map for us, I was contacting state legislators and was able to talk to them about what projects were in their jurisdictions. Unfortunately, for some reason, the state legislative districts weren't showing up a moment ago when I'm running this web page through a PowerPoint presentation. So some of the functionality may not be working, but other ones work. I think so here are county council jurisdictions. And so, I'm able to talk with the elected officials about funding issues and grant application issues that are specific to their districts. And that was frankly quite helpful in terms of trying to help ensure proper funding for the main state grant program called the Washington Wildlife and Recreation Program, WWRP. It's a lot of alphabet soup in the recreation world. And there was big effort to help ensure that that program was properly funded so that various projects could proceed. So I would like to have this kind of resource available for the public as well, with the additional layers of the survey information. But even there are further steps that we could do as we look at the regional trails plan, and as you can very well see, there's a whole lot of red there, and we'd like to see a whole lot more green in terms of the green are completed trails, and red are planned trails, or trails that are in the regional trails plan. And so if in short, my goal is to turn red dotted lines into solid green lines so we can enjoy trails. But that's when I'll turn to congressional districts. So you can see which congressperson I need to contact, or that you would need to contact to about a certain funding issue. So I'm sorry I didn't show both layers at once earlier, but it's been helpful and will, I think, continue to be helpful. But what if we were able to show the regional trails plan segments in terms of not just the sections that are completed and things that are uncompleted, or just sections of phase 1 or phase 2, but a little bit more of what status they're in. What particular segments are the local jurisdictions planning to work on in the next year? What sections are in current planning, are currently under in planning process? What sections are under construction? And so I think it would be a handy resource to provide that information. But you can also provide in those pop-up windows other links to other information pop-ups to get more information about trail projects, so that we can help the local jurisdictions inform the public about what, if there was a master plan, draft master plan that needs that they're welcoming comments for, or if there are public meetings coming up. And so we want to help get the word out for the local jurisdictions to the public. So it's another way we can utilize this map. So general trail info and outreach, but also fund drives. This past year, earlier in the year, we had the first financial partnership with Pierce County Parks. Our fund drive was labeled the hashtag Spruce Up Sprinker. The specific project was for the Sprinker Recreation Center Outdoor Improvements Project. The county has an aging facility in the Sprinker Recreation Center, and they applied for grants to update that facility for the public. Really high needs area of the county, great project. And it also includes a section of trail, the Parkland Community Trail. There'll be a trailhead on the grounds of the Sprinker Recreation Center. And as part of their grant budget, they had included that they would raise a certain amount of money from private donations. It's from the public. In this case, the public, you and I, is private, and the public institution refers to Pierce County Parks. So they would, this public-private partnership that was in their budget, they needed a way to fulfill that obligation. And so, since we are an organization whose whole mission is to help trails happen, and since there's a trail involved in this project, we got involved. And with a handy little partnership that I'll show you in just a sec, we were able to raise the funds needed. $8,000 was our goal. We raised that in about 2.5 months, and we were able to leverage $1 million in grants for Pierce County Parks. So that was our financial first foray into a financial partnership. And so it started, making us think more about how can we work with these local jurisdictions. And there's always going to be someone in the community, a community booster, who is really is a little more well-informed, a little more aware of projects, and they're just really big fans of trails. And who knows? Maybe they're even a thorn in the side sometimes, because they're always asking for trails. Well, let's monetize their energy and their enthusiasm for trails. So if they have this trail project, if we can put them together with a community audience, but and raise funds, that'd be great. But it would be even better if we were including some incentives for that. So as a 501c3, ForeverGreen Trails can provide a tax benefit if that's desirable to folks to make donations targeted to specific trail projects. But we're interested in also finding funding partners who can provide some match dollars to that, so that we are done. So that's what we're calling our Trail Accelerator Program, in that little slightly darker blue box, the rocket ship. So we're trying to incentivize local giving through partnerships. And you say, well, what's the big deal? I mean, you raised $8,000, Larry. That doesn't buy a trail. You're darn right, it doesn't. It's orders of magnitude off. But it's not. It's the object of this is not to build the trail with these dollars. It's to leverage funds. So that whole project, or that whole model I was showing before, is the local jurisdiction and community booster. We're thinking about a trail project with our Trail Accelerator Program, where we're getting incentivized local donations. We're then able to leverage larger state and federal grants that are the things that actually do build the trails that we enjoy. And they do that because these programs are increasingly looking for a public-private partnership. And in the case of the Sprinker Recreation Center that I mentioned earlier, we did that fundraising drive after the fact. What we want to do is flip that whole model around and do it in a proactive fashion, so that when applicants are marching into these grant agencies with their grant applications, they can have a letter from ForeverGreen Trails saying, in hand, we have collected for you for this specific project, whatever amount of dollars we fundraised, and which demonstrates it's the proverbial bird in the hand, or the matching grants in the hand, and being worth more, hopefully, than ones that are promised. So we're trying to get more proactive with that, but it will be the information that we're collecting through the Trails Scorecard Program about what projects jurisdictions are likely to apply for grants for in the next couple of years, that are going to help us figure out and target which projects in which jurisdictions need this kind of help. And that helps direct us to go out and get the matching funds that we are then going to administer through these programs. So big dollars at stake, and you want to do a really, really good job in terms of making sure that your jurisdiction is competitive. And so those are just a few ideas of how we can utilize the information from the Trails Scorecard Program. And I don't know, Chad or Mike, if you have other things that you wanted to add about utilizing technology for trails and for trail development, I certainly welcome that.
Well, definitely. The thing that I think is the most interesting aspect about it is being able to share information easily online about sections of trails that you enjoy, and then also looking at the opportunity for folks in communities to move forward and create funding for last mile sections and sections that are connecting communities.
Yeah, those last mile issues are sometimes biggies. I just before this webinar, I was in communication with folks from the Public Works Department of the city of Milton. And folks who are more familiar with this area will know that we have this great north-south interurban trail, but there's also an east-west component that goes through Edgewood and Milton, and there are some last mile, quote unquote, last mile issues that are really important. And the trails work a whole lot better when they're actually connected, just like roadways. Imagine that.
Future.
I want to recognize a comment from Sean Jensen in the chat. As Ken Parks Commissioner, Key Penn Parks Commissioner, we often feel left out of regional trails conversations. And Larry, that gets back to your comment of a few moments ago, where you described surveys as one part of a dialogue. And the other part of the dialogue can be the web map or reports. But what can happen with surveys is as soon as somebody fills out a survey and clicks submit, their presence is registered on the web map. So they can see right away that they're in the dialogue. And so people who feel left out of regional trails conversations can use this information technology as a way to stay involved and to promote that dialogue in a transparency model that the public or the other people that are invited into the web map are able to participate in as well.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, this is the survey is just the beginning of that dialogue. We just need to do a little focus group work first, and then we'll know better how to help folks. We can follow up with we noticed that you didn't have, as I mentioned, you didn't have a proclamation. Would you like that? Yes or no? Or would you like, we noticed that you didn't have a program for collecting private donations. Would you be interested in learning more about our fundraising partnerships? And, and hopefully we'll have the incentivized version. We actually have funding for a pilot version of that, thanks to the Active Transportation Community of Interest, part of the Puyallup Watershed Initiative. So within their service area, we have a couple matching grants available for local jurisdictions pursuing trail projects. And we might be utilizing that indeed for Milton and Edgewood, and for their interurban trail projects. So be really neat. And, I definitely look forward to, and I know that, the Key Penn Parks is, I could understand the different interpretations of feeling left out of that regional trails discussion, because it's more a matter of the county's non-motorized trails plan providing connections to the rest of the county's regional trail network. But this is even that issue can be talked about in the forum that ForeverGreen Trails will be providing for local jurisdictions. Of have we properly served for Key Penn constituents by not having regional trail there? Maybe we should. Maybe we should have trails that specifically connect the Key Penn district to and through Penn Met to the Cushman Trail. So I appreciate that comment. And I also appreciate, by the way, Mike, you monitoring the Q&A, because somehow I think I've lost, it was in my controls, which flew to the top.
And Sean's pointing out he didn't mean it as a complaint, just an observation. So I didn't mischaracterize that.
No, it's not at all meant or taken as a complaint. And we want to have we definitely want to have an inclusive situation here. But that was actually a pretty good transition. I was going to take questions, but I just wanted to see if Mike or Chad, you had other questions about how to further extend technology for trails to help us build faster and catch up.
Well, I think in this context, it's really important to see how having a platform like the ArcGIS stuff online allows you to have a conversation and have something to look at. And whether you're a local trail builder, a volunteer, or a person who is involved in formalized policy development and planning and funding, it's a great place to gather, and it's a great way to share that information. It gives you a lot of useful information. So in that way, I think it's better than some of the other forums and some of the other technology platforms that I've seen that are out there that are sort of, competing for our space. It's competing for our attention. I enjoy using the ESRI stuff, and I found it to be a really fun project to work on. So, yeah.
This is an interesting, this gets into some consulting work I've done. And many times I've been in rooms where there are a bunch of people from different departments in a company or an NGO, and they're meeting each other for the first time. And they've worked together for years, right? But they haven't sat and looked at a map on a whiteboard or projected on a wall or an easel, and really understood where they fit in relation to the other activities of their organization. I'll bet you anything that a lot of people in these jurisdictions really don't know what's happening even next door, and that your map and survey is a way to pull those things together and promote peer-to-peer dialogue as well.
I think that it's an important part. I mean, let's unpack that a little bit. A lot of ways developing trail resources for communities can get locked into a dogma of competition. And when we start looking at what the state in Washington is doing with its framework and trying to understand its equity goals, this is really a win-win situation for everyone. So well-planned trails can connect communities, and connecting communities in an equitable manner is important. So I think by combining our vision and looking to articulate that for all the members in a community, that's the best way to succeed.
And it's kind of interesting that when ForeverGreen Trails was founded, it was envisioned more as this forum to serve the jurisdictions. And I'm told that for the first many years that it was around, it was doing that in a way that was helpful and helping out the jurisdictions. And that maybe there was a little bit of organization drift, perhaps. But I think that we're refocusing on our jurisdictions and how to help them. And really, the conversation that I had with Roxanne Miles, the county's parks department director, I think she characterized it as, 20 years ago, the need was, there was a big advocacy need to get jurisdictions to understand what trails are and to plan for them. And by and large, that battle has been won. That's the good news. And the landscape has changed. And now almost every jurisdiction has some sort of trails plan. We want to learn more about what they have and what degree and what level of detail they have. But they basically have the trails plans. But what we're noticing is that it's taking a long time to build the trails. But really, even regardless, it's the need is less about the advocacy for trail planning and more about the advocacy for trail development. And so there is, I think, a refocusing effort within our organization. And it really just goes hand in hand with the scorecard program and that Trail Accelerator matching grant program that I mentioned.
It'll be nice when you're so successful that the drift moves towards trail maintenance and trail improvements after your network is all built out, right? I mean, all these things go through generational life cycles.
Yeah, I think the trail developers are like, the maintenance happens, it's like as soon as you cut the ribbon, it's like they probably feel the clock ticking. Yeah. So, but yeah, I guess I wanted to then ask if folks who are joining us tonight have any questions or comments, frankly, and we'll be happy to entertain them.